do more content like this. So please let me know if you enjoy this or if you would like this maybe like on a separate channel or on Patreon. But I am going to be like soft speaking today, so it is considered ASMR and relaxing. But I'm going to be reading a few scary stories, specifically the ones called Let's Not Meet, which, basically means weird encounters or scary encounters with like people with real life situations. So it's a scary world out there. So we're gonna get into this. Hope you enjoy. And I'm scary, so I have my computer right here, and I'll be reading. I'll be looking down a little bit. Okay. The first one is called Surgical Zombie Smoke Break. I have a lot of weird encounters outside my office on my smoke breaks, but I think this one takes the cake, even with how anticlimactic it was. Today I was sitting on the wall outside my building, smoking and messing around on my phone. I had probably been sitting there for about 2 minutes without looking up when I finally do and notice a guy in the corner about 20 feet away staring intently at me. He's hunched over, facing me in the classic zombie pose, wearing a large coat, a surgical mask, and gloves. I didn't know how long he'd be staring at me. I didn't know how long he'd be standing there, but it was that time of day and the area is relatively populated, so despite being the only people on the street, I wasn't too worried. I went back to looking at my phone, but kept discreetly glancing in his direction to see if he was still there. He didn't move or stop looking at me for probably another minute and a half, just sunken shoulders with his unblinking eyes pointed directly at me over his mask. Finally, I notice an older man walking towards us, and my cigarette is almost finished, so I assume, worst comes to worst, this guy will be near if anything happens. I glance back at my phone and hear what I assume are the older man's footsteps approaching. Before I have a chance to look up, the surgical zombie is sitting within an inch of me on the wall. I'm a polite girl, so I gave him a vague smile, while my inner self and personal space are screaming at me to get up and leave. He asked me for a cigarette, so I gave him one, and he just continues to sit there with it unlit. I can't fight my manners, so I ask him if he needs a light, and he gives me a gloved double thumbs up and stares at me. I ask him if that meant he had one, which he responds with another double thumbs up. I assumed that was him saying he did, so I turn back to my phone, planning on taking one more drag before getting up to leave. And then he says, "Yes, I need one." So I give him my lighter. He hands it back, and I put my smoke out and stand up. He then begins laughing, like full belly laughing. I didn't really know how to respond, so I tell him to have a nice day and walk into my building. To be honest, I've never really had a fear of people, and I can't say this is the first time I've had someone do something like this, but the mask and gloves really added to the absurdity of the situation. Next one is called Have We Met Already? It's Friday night at around 8:45 p.m. The little one's in bed, and I'm chilling with some friends online, gaming. There's a loud bang, and I'm instantly freaking out. Due to having my home, my safe place, invaded by some creeper twice in the past 3 months. I turn the volume down on my computer, trying my best to come up with excuses. Oh, it was the neighbors doing something. Who in their right minds would try to break into my house when they see that I'm awake? Front outdoor light on, lounge light on. It's quiet for a while, so I return to playing the game and talking to my friends. That's when I hear rustling. I think it's coming from the game, despite the volume being super low. But to be on the safe side, I turned the sound on the computer off completely. The rustling still there. At this point, I think it might be the annoying pest possum. The banging could have been jumping onto the roof, and now it was snuffling around outside the leaves, searching for some food. As I said earlier, who would try to trespass when they could clearly see someone was home? If they did trespass, why would they be doing it so loudly? I want to say it put me at ease, but it didn't. Fast forward half an hour, and the noises have stopped. My cat's begging me to let it outside. Little bastard. I love him, really. I hate opening doors, curtains, windows at night. Paranoia at its finest. But tonight, I had a reason to be paranoid at least. I kept the chain lock on the door and let the fat fuzzball squeeze out, and had a bit of a peek through the crack, seeing if anything was amiss on my front lawn. Nothing out of the ordinary, so I locked the door and head back to the lounge. 5 minutes later, someone tries the door handle. Finding it locked, I hear a laugh, and they start scratching on the glass as I frantically grab my phone and call the police. Whoever it was had left by the time they answered the phone, and the police couldn't find evidence that anyone had been on the property. They did a sweep of the neighborhood, but couldn't find anyone on the streets. Whoever you are, I'd say let's not meet, but I'm pretty sure you're the same person who came by the other 2 times. And I'm fairly certain that person is my ex. So Mr. X, if it is you, smile for the cameras next time you come around. They just arrived in my mailbox. Ooh, I don't like that one. The next one is called Never Take Powdered Envelopes from Strangers. The other day at work, we were basically told to look out for ourselves and others, wait for security guards, etc. Now, this was a normal thing for the suburb we live in, but it was still a bit strange. My friend from night, Phil, told me why. Their friend and co-worker finished up around 12 that morning and was approached by this guy when he was at his car. The guy looked pretty normal, trackies and all, and gave him an envelope claiming that there were free Fringe tickets inside. Fringe is an art festival, like music and comedy and dancing, etc. There was some sort of white powder on the ticket, but he just assumed it was cocaine or something. Again, not uncommon in this area. So they just grabbed it, planning to throw it out later because it was probably counterfeit. Not wanting to spark any conflict, it's unpredictable around here, especially at 12 a.m. His mates came out around 12:15 to see him with something that looked like burns on his hands, where he touched the powder, and felt like he was burning on the inside and couldn't breathe properly. Luckily, he was still conscious and told him to take him to the hospital, which luckily wasn't that far away. They got there, and practically everyone that came into contact with him felt like they were burning under their skin and were having difficulty breathing within minutes. They had to call hazmat fires, and everyone was decontaminated. Luckily, everyone is okay. Next one is called the dumpster creep. Around 9 p.m., I heard the telltale rumble that meant the forecasted storm was about to start. I couldn't recall if I had rolled up my car window when I got home, so I went out to check. It was already dark out, and I live in a part of town that isn't big on streetlights, so at night sometimes it's hard to even stay on the sidewalk without crashing into bushes. The dumpsters are about 200-300 feet from my car on our U-shaped street, tucked into a corner that backs into trees and a small creek. I live in the back of the building, so once I round the corner, you can't see me from my car nor the dumpsters. I got out of my car. As I rounded the corner, I could see what looked like a flashlight in the dumpster. Weird, but not alarming, as there are a lot of teenagers and young boys who mess around in that corner at the parking lot. My window was a bit down. As I was rolling it up, I could hear a clattering sound from the dumpsters. I turned to see someone climbing out of the dumpster and start shining the light in the other dumpster. My daughter had left her window down too, so I walked around to her door and rolled her window up too. I slammed her door shut a bit harder than I meant to, and since I was facing in the dumpsters, I could see the dumpster man freeze and swing his light in my direction. He immediately switched it off, and right as I started to walk back inside, he started full-on sprinting towards my direction. My butt had never moved so fast as I noped back onto the sidewalk into the back of the building. I quietly opened and shut my door, locked, in hopes that with the 8 apartments back here, he wouldn't know where I was. Or maybe he was running for reasons entirely unrelated to me. Or maybe he was just messing with me and is now having a laugh with his friends about the lady he just scared the crap out of. Whatever it was, I'm sure as heck not getting any sleep tonight. Me neither. Okay, and the last one we are reading is called Late at Night, He Comes. This past weekend, my soon-to-be wife, Alexa, and I had just settled down for the night of movies, pizza, and cuddling. We live in a residential area right outside of town. Our home situated right across the street from a church with a large cemetery behind it. Most of our neighbors don't own pets, but there's one particular across the street and downwards a bit who owns perhaps the most loudest, most annoying dog to ever exist. Quite an annoyance on a night like tonight, but luckily it was quiet for the entire evening. It's around 10:15 p.m. and we're lying down watching a film in our living room when the loudest dog on earth begins to go off. Unfortunately, there's nothing much we can do, except maybe confront our neighbor or file a noise complaint, but who wants to be the neighbor that does that? After about 5 minutes, I get off the couch and decide to walk over to the neighbor's home and say something about the dog. As I headed outside and made it to their driveway, unfortunately, I noticed that the neighbor wasn't home. Their only car was not there. I decided anyway to walk up to the door and ring the bell. After a minute of no one answering, I gave up and headed back towards home. I noticed that Alexa had stepped outside and was looking on towards the direction of the barking. I told her that no one was home and that we should either ignore it or finally file a complaint. No one should have to deal with a loud dog at night, especially if you're trying to unwind after a long day of work or trying to sleep. Alexa and I head back inside for a bit, and finally about 10 minutes of the dog ceases to bark. Alexa and I exhaled and laughed a bit before continuing our film. But of course, not long after that, the dog starts up again. This time, it sounded vicious. I got up, went outside and approached our neighbor's fenced-off backyard and saw the dog. It must have heard or saw me coming. It stopped barking, walked up to me, and began to pant in the cute way dogs do. I chuckled and said the dog's name, to which he looked at me and sat down. Such a good animal, even if he's so loud. Then I heard something that sounded like somebody walking through leaves, coming from behind me and to the right. I turned around to see somebody looking at me from behind a gravestone in the cemetery. The dog must have heard it as well, as it sprung up and began to bark in the direction of the gravestone. I looked on as the person continued staring in my direction, and as the dog continued to bark. I looked towards my house, where I saw Alexa standing near her car, looking at me with a confused look on her face. I looked in horror as I saw the person reveal himself from behind the gravestone. His forehead and cheek was stained red with blood, dripping down off his chin. In his hand was some sort of dagger. The dog began to go ballistic as the person took a few steps in our direction before stopping. I turned to the dog, then back at home. Alexa, who was still outside, yelled out to me to ask what was wrong. I told her to call the police. She said, "Why? The dog?" To which I replied, "He's fricking armed." Probably confused, Alexa went back inside to grab her phone as I continued to watch as the person now began to back off, the dog now going berserk. It was going to take me a bit of time for someone to reach our home, so I readied myself to go in self-defense mode as I watched the man finally turn around and walk away towards the back of the cemetery towards the woods. When the police finally arrived, the person was gone, and I was stuck there explaining to a couple of skeptical officers about my encounter. They didn't seem to take me that seriously, but still investigated the area as I explained to Alexa about the person I saw. When the police left after finding no trace of anyone, Alexa and I didn't feel much better. We locked our doors and windows, and I decided to call our neighbors to fill them in on everything before heading back to continue our movie night in spectacular fashion with The Exorcist. I feel like that one would freak me out more than anything because was it a person? Was it real? Was he real? Or was that like a ghost? That's a haunting one. I don't like that one. I hope you guys enjoyed all of these spooky Let's Not Meet stories. If you did, let me know. Comment, like, subscribe if you haven't already. I really appreciate it. So let me know which one your favorite one was. I really liked the last one, and then what was the other one I really liked? No, the envelope one was just scary because that's like, it was like physically hurting that person, but without like, you know, doing anything like close combat. I don't know. I don't like that one. But yeah. So with all that being said, good night, good night, good night. Sleep tight, and I will see you again very